So what was the feedback that you got? They said that it wasn't a good idea. Why? Did they explain why? We are looking to enter into a junior venture with another couple bungalow rental. Okay, duplex. Okay, we'll get to that. 1 second. They said that the prices are really high and no one wants to pay what? Ryan, I'll get to yours in a second. We're just gonna finish this one with Vince. The prices are really that people won't be able to afford high rents that rent to owns would be. Um, okay. I think that if someone is looking to purchase a home, the rent to own by nature should be close to and over and above what they could afford to buy. These are individuals that otherwise could buy other than their credit, right? So I don't understand where they're coming from. If somebody can buy a house and their credit is no good, then they clearly can afford higher than average rents, as markets like Toronto and Vancouver would afford, right? I mean, the rents are lower than the actual purchase, the amount it would cost to carry. These are individuals that would rent otherwise. So would they not be considered a broker we would want them to work with? Would they not be considered a broker? I don't, I don't know what, I'm sorry, can you rate that again? I'll let you rate that again. Before I forget, let's see, how you explain the rent to own to a mortgage broker is very important. Maybe the mortgage broker is concerned about the appreciation rates. That's possible. Those wouldn't be the individuals we'd want to have as a part of our power team. No, you could have them as part of your power team. Actually, those mortgage brokers are less creative and more likely to offer individuals that are um, unable to qualify. But the individual has to be able to qualify, for a mortgage other than credit. In other words, they have the income, they have the debt service ratio, or close to. Um, they have the down payment. So there's really nothing holding this person back except credit. So I'm not sure. I think maybe that might be it. What Sierra is touching upon is the explanation of that to the individual. Um, have you had a chance, Vince, to go through the rent to own on demand? Yeah, okay. All right, no worries. So really it's these are individuals that can afford to pay the rent that we would establish based on the market. And you got to remember that the market rent is going to be close to whatever the market is. It's the non-refundable option consideration, the rent credit per month that we're going to give them back. That would be over and above that rent, and that amount would be obviously something they could afford. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to buy the house in the first place, regardless of their credit. Does that make sense, Vince? Yes, exactly. They were just giving us second thoughts. Well, sure, and but the way they were expressing those second thoughts, it didn't seem like they understood how rent to own works. To say that people don't want to pay the higher rents, there is no higher rent. But I trust Leah, so yeah. Okay. Oh, you trust me? Oh, okay. That's good. I think they're misunderstanding what a rent to own is. So I think that might be where the problem lies. So, we want to make sure that we explain that they're not paying higher rent. They're paying market rent plus an additional amount that would make up the difference between rent and own. So markets in Toronto and Vancouver and higher end markets, you're going to, without question, see a difference between rent and ownership. And ownership is going to cost a lot more than rent in these markets. Does everybody understand that? Does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody not understand what I just said there? And if you don't, that's okay. Rents are going to be lower than ownership in markets where it's higher. Does everyone understand the difference and the truth of that? So a property So a property that's 600,000. For property 600,000, how much would we need? Just a quick calculation. How much would we need in rent? For property 600 grand. How much rent would I need per month? Anybody? Yep. So $6,000 to make that cash flow. Now, nobody's paying $6,000 a month on a $600,000 property, right? So at 3,000, they're paying 3,000 rent, right, on a property that's 600,000, which is more realistic. So let me get back to that. So 300,000 on 600,000. This will come to close to break even for PITI, right? Principal, interest, taxes, insurance. That will come close to covering everything. Everybody see that? I just made up that number. 3,000 is just an arbitrary number. Yeah, you're not going to get $6,000 rent on a $600,000 property. That's not going to happen. So I just made up $3,000. Right? You might not even get that. You might get 2,000 or 2,500. Principal, interest. Taxes, insurance. Principal, interest, taxes, insurance. So principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, or whatever they are, in a property. But PI, TI, right, plus vacancy, maintenance, and property management. This is why properties have a negative cash flow. When you add these things together, you typically are losing money with any sort of financing. If you have any sort of financing on that, you're gonna, unless you're 5% down, Even the 5% down is going to be a problem. You're not going to, in most cases, get there. So we need principal, interest, taxes, insurance, plus vacancy maintenance and property management to the cost of that, because this is our maintenance cost, has to be less than the income produced by the property. Is everybody following? So we have expenses. Our expenses are going to equal PITI plus vacancy maintenance and property management. Okay? That's our expenses. Okay, so with the cost of this is the cost of being an investor for a owner. So the owner has expenses of what? PITI plus what? Maintenance. Okay? So if you're an owner, you have principal, interest, taxes, and insurance plus maintenance. You don't have property management and vacancy, it's cost. Now, in most cases, this number, this amount here, this second person, this ownership that owns the house, that's if they were to rent their house, because of the vacancy and property management, and really the maintenance, and when you calculate it, that's where you're going to have negative cash flow. But the owner has principal, interest, tax, insurance, plus maintenance. The renter, what does the renter have? The renter, for expenses, what do they have? Well, they don't have PITI, they have rent, plus utilities. That's what they have. Okay? But both the ones above, both of these have utilities. Both of them have utilities. So we don't count utilities because it's going to be a cost, period. If I rent the house out, PITI plus vacancy maintenance, property insurance, property management, I could, take care of the utilities, or the renter could. In the second case, with the owner, they have principal, interest, taxes, insurance plus maintenance, but they also have utility costs. So, and the renter also has utility costs if they are paying the utilities. So we don't really count the utilities because that's going to be a cost there. Whoever takes on that property is or is not going to pay it, but it has to be paid. In the other cases, the other ones are standard. If you're an investor in scenario one, you're gonna have to pay for all these: principal, interest, taxes, insurance, vacancy maintenance, and property management. The reason that we really like the ability to put together a rent to own is because these are taken out. Now a home, renting a house, unless the house itself is below a certain amount and the rents are above a certain amount, you're not going to be able to cash flow normally on a property. Most properties are going to range in a, let me just change the color. It's going to be renting, let's see that color. So what you're going to get is you're going to get a cap rate of 3, which means what? For every $100,000 in property price, $100,000. If I pay cash for the property of $100K, I'm going to make $3,000. So what does that mean, folks? If I have a property that's $100K and I'm going to make, and it's going to make me $3,000 in cash, what does that mean for an investor? Well, that means if I pay it off and I make $3,000, and $3,000 is 3% cap rate means what? Now, on $100,000, you're not going to get the $3,000. You're going to get less than that if the cap rate's 3. But for properties in Calgary, Edmonton, less so, but more, Edmonton, Toronto and Vancouver, the cap rates are at 3. That means that you have to be able to produce, after paying all the bills, the taxes and insurance, you still got to pay taxes and insurance, are still paid on the property. That's the only real expense you have if you have a renter. Sorry, taxes, insurance, vacancy, maintenance, and property management, because you don't have an actual mortgage. All of that has to be taken away from the gross rent. Well, you're not going to get $3,000 gross rent on a $100,000 property. That's not going to happen. Does everybody understand where I'm coming from here? Is anybody lost right now? It's possible. So when you're looking at property, the fundamental problem with property, a normal property done the normal way, is there's not enough income to cover, a 100K property. What's that going to get you in rent? What's this going to get you in rent? Let's say that it's $1,200, which is that's going to be tough, right? In some places, you're not going to get $1,200. Well, you tell me, how much should we get for a $100,000 property, you think, in rent? You tell me, how much? How much are we going to get? Anybody? Yeah, single family home. Okay, let's go 750. Now 750, that's the gross rent. So what do we got to take away? Oh, I got to take away taxes. I got to take away maintenance. And I got to take away insurance. Okay? Yeah. I made an error now with the 3,000. I just realized that was for the year, but we can come back to that. Anyways, if I take away taxes, maintenance, and insurance, daylight taxes are on this house is going to be 1%, so that's 1K. Then we have maintenance is going to be 1% over the average of the life of the property. That's 1K, and that's a year, by the way. And insurance is going to be about, let's say, $1,000 a year. That's going to be 1K. Okay, so the gross would be 3,000 in expenses. Yes, does everybody follow me? So 3,000 expenses. No principal, interest, taxes, and insurance at this point. Although, obviously, if we mortgage this property, we're going to have to deal with that challenge. So that's what's going to cost you, if we do it for the year. Now, what's the cost? What are we bringing in gross rent? So 750 times 12. What is that? 9,000. Did everybody get that? So 9,000 is what we're going to get. 9K. Didn't have to do that. 9K. Okay. So our net operating income is how much? 6K, which gives us a cap rate of what? Of 6. Everybody see that? Good. Okay. Now you see when the property is in the 100K range, right? You're going to do better. The cap rate's 6, right? It's not great, but it's better than a 3. So 6 cap rate. That's if we paid cash. Now, if we mortgage this property, if we start to mortgage this property and take that, the principal and interest, that is gonna cut this. It's gonna cut this considerably, in half or more. Okay, that's gonna take away and bring the cap rate, the not the cap rate won't change, but the expenses will change, and the net operating income here will clearly change, right? Now, as you go, and this is not terrible, 100,000 is not terrible, but you're really only making 6% on the property, which is not worth it, right? 6 cap rate means 6% over the overall value. This is not a good investment at 6%. We're not interested in that. It's too low. But what we start to see, if we finance this property, it's right on the edge. Remember, it's on the edge. We might be able to make it work because creative financing is going to take, we're going to be in the 5 to 7 range for creative financing. So we're really on the edge of being able to make this actually cash flow with a decent return. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Right, we start doing creative financing on this property, we're probably going to be in the 5. On the high end, we're going to be 7. It's going to wipe out most of the money that we make, if any, on this property. But we could make a little bit of money and make the return at least decent in the double digits if we did some creative financing, because we would want, 10% or less. Okay? Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Is anybody not clear? Because I'm going to move away from this to something else. I want to make sure you understand. Okay. So is there possibility for this to profit for us with a decent return? Yeah, if the creative financing is below the 6, say it's 5 or 4, yeah, we can make some money and we can do better. We can do a decent ROI, which is very important to us, because ROI really is how we're going to judge, the validity, if this is a good property. Now, there has to be cash flow. It can't be just, infinite ROI and it means it's good. Well, because you have no money into it, you're going to have an infinite return, but you still need cash flow, right, if we're holding the property. Now, the problem, gets more intense because when we start getting into, right, when you start getting into properties, so that was 100K, that is a 6 cap. But you start getting 200, 300, and you go down and you start getting into 600, you can't sustain the 6% cap rate even, let alone higher. That cap rate's going to come down because the rents aren't going to go up, based on that 6% cap rate. It's not going to work, right? As you go higher and higher, the rents can't keep up with the prices. They can't. Okay, does everybody understand what I'm saying? Right, so here we had 750 rent, right? That gave us the 6 cap rate. Well, how much more rent are we going to get for a $100,000 property? Well, is this going to continue to double, right? Is it going to continue to get, considerably larger? Well, no, not really. On a $200,000 property, maybe we get a grant, for rent. Maybe we get, I don't know, $1,200. I don't know. You guys tell me. But as you go down, you're not going to see this multiplied by 6. Your rent on a $6,000 property might still be in the 25 to 3,000 range. Might be 3,000, but it's not going to be, relative to the increase in property value. It doesn't work that way. There's a point where the property values far exceed, relative rents. And we know this because on a $1 million property, you're not going to get, $10,000 rent, or even, 8,000, 7,000. You're not going to get these kind of rents to cover the cost of financing it properly, to make this property viable, right? So the whole point, again, is, keep this in mind, right? We have cash, we have cash flow, we have ROI. If we're doing this properly, we recognize what? Well, higher cash flow, higher cash flow, higher cash. If I put more money in the property, the dilemma is my ROI goes down. What we want to see is the higher ROI. Well, to do that, based on the relationship of finance and money, this needs to come down and this needs to come down. There's a point, though, where if you don't put enough money in, into the property, you're going to have a big fat what? Zero. You have to have some cash flow. It doesn't work without cash flow. And we're talking about long-term ownership here. If you don't have cash flow, then who cares? Who cares what the ROI is? And who cares? The amount of cash is just worse than, worth. So there's a point where if we put, too little cash in a property, it won't cash flow. Here's the constant dilemma. So what do you say to yourself? Well, you say, you got to start with, what is the criteria? What am I looking for as an investor? Well, as an investor, I'm looking for the ability to get, 20 to 30, this is optimum, 20 to 30% ROI, right? Because if I can get that, what does it mean? If I say 20 to 30, what does it mean? Well, if I'm getting 20 to 30% ROI, I know for sure, 100%, I must have cash flow. If you have no cash flow, then you can't be making a 20 to 30% return. Okay? And there must be an amount put in, some sort of amount put in that I'm putting into the property, because it's based on cash return, which means cash flow divided by investment. That's what's given me this 20 to 30%. Does everybody understand that? So having an infinite return doesn't mean a good deal. If there's no cash flow, that doesn't mean it's a good deal. There's no cash flow. We have to have cash flow, if we're holding a property long term. So yes, we want the best possible return, and that is infinite, but it doesn't make, there's no point if there's no cash flow. Making an infinite return on nothing is nothing. We want a return. So, is there a scenario, where we get a high return on investment, let's say infinite, and there is cash flow? Well, sure, that's the optimum real estate deal. The optimum real estate deal is what? The optimum real estate deal is this. Let me show you. The optimum real estate deal comes down to this. Real simple. I want zero money in, zero cash. I want cash flow, which means what? What am I going to have? If I have $0 in and I have cash flow, what is that automatically going to mean? What's it automatically going to mean? That's cash flow, right? Which means the ROI must be what? Infinite. Exactly. Does everybody understand that? Now, if you have a property, and this is why, it's not a bad idea to start with your properties and ask yourself a simple question. Can this property be 100% financed and still produce cash flow? That's what we want. Can I have $0 in and will it produce cash flow? If it does, that's a check. That's good. But even in this, what do we say? What do we say about cash flow? We have rules. We have a system, an approach. What do we say about cash flow? What's it need to be? Yeah, it needs to be 75 a door. So if I can get $0 in, 75 or more, then I have a great deal. Does everybody see that? If I have $0 in and I make it 75 a door, it means I have a great deal. Does it mean I'm going to put any cash in? No cash in? No. But if I can run the numbers and it produces this result, I know I got a great deal. So what does this mean? Well, it means that for every dollar I put in, what's going to happen? For every dollar I put in, so here we go. Let's go back and say this. So I have cash, I have cash flow, and I have ROI. Which means if I have a property that has $0 in, produces $75 or more, right? And that's going to give me an infinite return. So what does this mean to the investor? Well, it means to the investor, first of all, I got an excellent deal. That's great. And it means that for every dollar I put in, so if I put $1 in, what's going to happen? If I put any money in, the more money I put in, the larger the cash flow. Yes, the ROI is going to go down, but I'm starting from infinite. So I can legitimately go up to, again, rule. This is a rule right here. See this? This here is a rule we have to protect ourselves, to make sure that, what's the rule we have about cash? What's the rule we have about cash? Who can tell me? What's the rule we have about cash? So if I have a minimum $75 or more, what's my rule about cash that I have? So, Donald, okay, 75 is after paying principal. Yeah, that's net operating income, Donald. That's all costs. You make $75 per door, every cost. That's net. So the net operating income needs to be 75. So what's the rule I have about cash? But what's my maximum, Ryan? What's my maximum? You got it. You're on the same page. We're all on the same page. What's the maximum? What do we say as a rule? What's the maximum? There you go, Anna. Good. 10%. So here we go. We have another one. 10% is my maximum. So do you see what's forming here? Right? If 10%, if I can get a property, I am allowed to put up to 10%. I am going to make $75 a door or more. That's going to give me an excellent return on investment. Typically, it's easily going to give you double digits if you start with the no cash 75 a door and ROI is infinite. So in this scenario, if I'm putting in 10%, if I start with the first one, if I start with this one here, right? If I start with this here, this scenario, I know that the more I put in, the higher the cash flow. Yes, the return is going to go down, but I'm allowed to go up to 10%. What's going to happen to my cash flow? If I put in 10% in this property, what's going to happen? Okay, well, it's not going to be 75 a door anymore. It's going to be considerably higher. Does everybody understand? Because I'm putting more money in, what's happening is the cost of carrying the property is being reduced. Because I'm putting in my own cash, 10%. Right? So if I start with a property, no cash, 75 a door net operating income, and infinite return, okay, that's great. I can put up to 10%. What happens to the numbers there? Well, 10%, the cash flow is going to be considerably higher. It's going to go from 75 to, I don't know, we'd have to look at the scenario, but it's going to go up considerably. And what's going to happen? The ROI is going to go down. It is going to go down, but it's going to be still in that double digits range. Does everybody see this? Okay, good. So now, if I look at it, what do I got? I got this. I got, okay, makes sense. How does it work? Well, money. What can I say with money? Well, my rule is max is 10% or less. Okay? What's my rule for cash flow? Cash flow is 75 a door, minimum, 75 a door or greater. And this is going to produce a ROI of, let's go as low as 10. It's not, I don't want you to live in 10, but it's going to be 10 to infinite, right? That's what's going to work. We shouldn't be looking at anything lower than double digits. Does everybody see what's happening here? This is why we use these numbers, because now it makes sense. Because at 10%, even a 10% return, what does that mean? Well, it means our money's going to double. How often? Yeah, if we compound it, Ryan, you're absolutely right, 7.2 years. But if we don't compound it, Ryan, because in real estate, typically it's not you can't really use the compound rule in income reasons. Yeah, it's going to take 10 years. That's it, right there. You got it. It's going to take you 10 years. In 10 years, you've doubled your money. Now, let me tell you something. Doubling your money in 10 years without using compound interest is outstanding. Now, what if we can get 20%? What happens? How long will it take? We can get 20%. It takes 5 years. Yeah, considerably faster, right? If we go to 30%, it's going to take us 3.3 years. Yeah, Donald, you're using the compound ratio. We can't really use the compound ratio on this particular scenario because we're not really taking the cash we're making from this property, putting it back in and getting that same return. So the cash flow that we produce from this property, and the cash flow we produce can't really be used as compound, annualized return. So it's just the income that you're producing if we're just looking at cash flow from the property. Now, the other thing I wanna point out, so the added benefit of all of this that we haven't talked about yet is what? Anybody know? So this scenario works, everybody understands. The other one is, there's two other ones that come into play. One is all the time. Yeah, there you go. Excellent, Stephen. So we have capital appreciation, right, which may or may not be plus or minus. Okay, oops, plus or minus. We haven't added in this yet. So that's an added benefit because, you know, the market moves roughly around 6%. We don't count on that. We're hoping for more, right? But the other one that absolutely happens is what? Is equity, okay? The equity pay down. The equity is increasing over this period. So all these bills that we're paying, all the money that we're paying, you know, the renter's paying goes to rent, to the interest and principal. You know, all that equity is building up, and each year we're gaining some sort of equity, which is profit once we sell it or refinance it. We won't count it until really it's sold, but equity is happening. The other thing I want to keep in mind, is everybody with me? So capital appreciation could be plus or minus, but equity is always going up if they're paying it down. You know, the other one that we have to keep in mind when we're looking at, you know, this setup is what? Who can tell me? What's the other setup that's very important? The other things. Yeah, we got mortgage pay down and equity appreciation. We got both of those. Those are excellent. The other one I want you to keep in mind is this. Okay? Don't forget that maintenance, property management, and vacancy. Now, property management is a cost. It is what it is. So if this equals 10%, it's 10%. Can't do much about that. We're not going to worry about that. Okay? But we are going to make a point about, so this we don't, you know, property management can't do anything about. But we can make a point about what? Maintenance. Maintenance and vacancy create a reserve. Okay? These are reserves. Okay? So if we're using a vacancy rate of, say, our vacancy rate we're using is 5%. If it doesn't get used, this creates an increase in reserves. If maintenance is at 5%, and they create, and it's not used that year, that also creates a reserve. So we're creating reserves to protect us. Don't forget that. That's money sitting there. We're not doing anything, creating a reserve. And we should, so you see how when we go through this, we're trying to create as much as we can, right? We're trying to create a bulletproof type of investment where we're going into this investment knowing particular things like how much am I going to make based on, you know, income and expenses, but we're also recognizing that there's a future, and we don't know everything in the future. So we're making a plan to recognize and prepare for the future. That's why we have these vacancy, maintenance, and property management, because all these things, these three things, deal with the future. All three of these things deal with the future. Well, maintenance deals with the future because over the life of a property, saying 1% a year is not crazy. That's normal. You know, you're going to pay 1% a year. Vacancy, you know, we're going to, you know, it depends on where you are, obviously, in the country, but vacancy is going to be a reality. Even if I run the property perfect, you know, from time to time, people are going to leave and they're going to do something else, and new people are going to come in. During that period, there's going to be 30 days or more of vacancy. So we're building up these reserves. Property management also deals with future. Can anybody tell me how property management deals with future events? Because we don't know, right? We don't know how long people are going to stay, so that's vacancy. We don't know, you know, the wear and tear on the property. We can estimate, but we're creating reserves. How does property management deal with the future? Well, property management deals with the future in this. By employing property management on all our properties, it allows us to have a future in real estate. You see, because if we don't have property management, you will have a limited amount of properties you can manage yourself. This stops the system from going and moving forward into a larger sense. So property management is focusing again on the future, how? We're recognizing that we're trying to build a portfolio over time to control time. And if we don't have a functioning property management system employed on our properties, that we're using on our properties, we won't be able to achieve the maximum opportunity moving forward, because there'll be a limit of how many properties we can manage ourselves. And believe me, in almost all cases, let's just say most, because we don't want to dispute it, this 10% is not worth your time. That extra 10% off of gross income is not worth your time. In almost, in many, many cases, let's say most cases, I don't want to get into the particulars of the exception to rules, but it's not worth 10% of your time. The time you're gonna spend on a property, managing yourself, is not worth this, in my view, is not worth the savings. And it defeats the purpose of why we invest. Why do we invest? We invest to obviously produce money, but more specifically is to have time to spend that money. And if you don't have the time to spend that money, then who cares how much money you have? Nobody cares how rich, the richest man in the graveyard. Nobody cares. They're all dead in the graveyard. I don't mean to be morbid, but as Steve Jobs said, knowing that he was going to die was probably the best thing, that he recognized in his life to make him live the best possible life he could. He recognized that he had nothing to lose. You only get one run, so why not do what you want to do to keep you happy, to make you happy? So, it's important for us to stay true to, this is about money, not for money, so we can have the ability to be the best we can for ourselves, our family, our community. And it really depends on how significant you want to be as an individual. I think a lot of people wish to be 10 times as significant as they are. And believe me, when you get there, you'll be wanting to be 10 times more. So we want a functioning business. Obviously, we're going to follow the business rules and systems to allow us to achieve fundamentally what we want as an individual through our lifetime. So I hope this exercise helped us understand the importance in the relationship, of property. That being said, going back to the original point, Vince, Chewy, is that this stuff that you're learning here, I would say as a rule, maybe rules on it, people don't understand this. The mortgage brokers, the realtors, were not trained for this. The bankers weren't even trained for this. They don't understand this relationship, which puts you at a huge advantage that you understand this. Huge advantage that you understand this as a business person. That the challenge you're going to find is articulating it, explaining it to other people. You don't need to go into this depth. This is why power team members we need to respect the power team members and what they know, and we also got to recognize what they don't know. And what we want is power team members that can fulfill their obligation as a professional in what they do, whether it be a realtor, mortgage broker, accountant, lawyer, whatever. So we don't need to educate them to this extent to get them to do what we need to do and for them to achieve what their goals are in their profession. That's the kind of people we want to work with. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? Yeah, it's really, yeah, good. It's really about, yeah, excellent. Okay. It's really about, running a functional business, and this is, I think, the desire of all of you in some way or form, that, running a functional business that can live over time and hopefully build a legacy beyond our time. And this is definitely something that can do that for you. Will do that for you if you follow through. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the question of, we are looking into entering into a joint venture partnership with another couple on a bungalow reno into a duplex. They would be providing capital. We would be sourcing the debt, structuring paperwork under the corp, and managing. How would you suggest structuring? Okay, so that was the question by Ryan, right? So yeah, Dave, I saw that email. Okay, I'll get to that. So what I'll say quickly to that is that's a question I want you to obviously go over with your lawyer, your legal team. Um, you know, that's really, and you want to make sure that they're seeking out their own legal advice uh, in this case. But you know, there's 100 ways we could do that deal. And really, it's a question of taxes and asset protection. You know, that's what I would look at in moving forward and setting up the best structure. Remember always, I think great advice is remember have an easy way to get into a deal, and well, not easy. Let's just say this: a clear way of getting into a deal and clear way of getting out when you're dealing with partners. Clear way in, clear way out. You need that so you can stay partners, right? Or at least sustain some sort of relationship beyond the investment. Make sure you have a clear entry and exit in your contract. What would you be considered? What was it? Well, I mean, Ryan, you could do 50%. You could do 50-50. They're putting up the cash. You're putting up the brains. You are putting up the mortgage, so you could maybe get a little bit more of that as a management cost if you're managing the deal itself. I wouldn't want you to manage the property, but you could go 50-50. You know, I think that again, even with investors, folks, we'd want to ask them what they're looking for. You know, what are they looking for? What are their goals as investors? It's easy to say I want to make as much money as possible, but that's not really an answer. That's a axiom. It's obviously we want the most possible profit we can get, but that's why you can't talk in those terms. We want to talk in terms of, you know, you want this profit for what? What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve cash flow? Are you trying to achieve capital gains? What are you going to do with the money? You know, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to leave your job? Are you trying to, whatever it is, are you trying to replace income? Based on that kind of conversation, I think that you can get a better idea of what they want, how you can structure that deal to achieve their goals. You know, you should know your own goals for sure. And once you know your own goals, the advantage of knowing and understanding your goals is that you really have a huge ability, a huge advantage in achieving other people's goals, because you'll never violate your own goals, right? Your own. You shouldn't. What you're trying to achieve, and you can quickly give options to individual. All those options being good for you. To allow you to participate in a transaction with an individual, right? Because you know exactly what you want. You just need to understand what they want, and then structure your deals based on that ability to give them what they want. So I think that's why it's important for us, to know what we want. You need to know what you want. You know, that's very important to know what you want, so you can clearly articulate. Yeah, win-win, exactly. Clearly articulate what you're trying to do. Now, so at the end of the day, seek legal advice and make sure you come into that knowing what you want and they know what they want, and then it's pretty academic in that case. Where should we find deals? Zolo. I think you meant LOL, right? I think that's what you meant. Okay, well, before we do that, because we got a few minutes, and I want to make sure I talk to a couple individuals working on deals. Okay, so Dave, I think that it might be a good idea to connect with Sierra and Wilbert. The reason is both of you are looking at rent to owns and are coming at it from not different directions or anything, but are looking at that as a strategy, and I think that you can benefit from the relationship and possible, if it makes sense, partnerships and collaboration on your deals. What do you guys feel about that, Dave and Sierra and Wilbert? Yeah, Dave, what do you think about that, Dave? Maybe it warrants a conversation, because Dave, Sierra and Wilbert have been really aggressively going after rent to owns, and they have some opportunities that they're working on. I know you're working on one right now, Dave, and it looks good. It looks healthy. I think there might be an opportunity to do some collaboration and possible business together. That's something you have to work out together with you guys. But Sierra and Wilbur are putting some stuff together, and where they're looking for possible capital to execute those deals, and are definitely open to sharing the wealth. So I thought maybe that relationship, based on because I've received a couple of emails from both of you. Yeah, I think there might be an opportunity, and you guys are relatively in the same area. So I'm the one working on. I'd like to do solo. Sierra, I have talked and need to chat further with them. Yeah, sure, Dave. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one you're working on, go for it. They're working on one right now, Dave, that you might be interested in getting involved in, and providing some access to capital. That's why I thought it might be something that you'd be interested in looking at. Okay, good. All right. So, and Dave, they can help you out with the one you're looking at right now, just as another set of eyes, because they've done a lot of work on rent to own, and they're really on top of it. So, okay. So, do you guys know how to reach each other, Sierra and Dave? Don't put up any emails, please. Okay, good. And I think that you guys should have a conversation, and then you guys, please, you're more than welcome to involve me after you've had a conversation to see if I can assist in helping you guys move forward with that. Okay, so okay, good. Anybody else other than where do we find deals? Sued? Anybody else? Because we're wrapping up. We have about 5 minutes. So much for 30 minutes on the call, but this was well worth it. We covered some great content. What about doing a VTB on the current rent to own? Well, that's absolutely, Sierra. If you can pull that off, Wilbur, yeah, absolutely. Do the VTB. Sierra, you might be able to, do the VTB. Yeah, you can do the VTB and run those numbers. Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure. Yeah, you would, Sierra, you would have to have somebody qualify for the mortgage if it's not you, unless the owner was okay with you, if them holding the whole note on the property. In other words, them holding the whole mortgage on it, if they can. If they can't, then yeah, you would need to bring in a partner for that particular way of doing it. So, okay, well, if they're providing the down payment, that's awesome. So see, this is a great deal. This is a great opportunity. If they're going to provide the down payment, you're looking for someone to just hold the mortgage in their own name. I'm sure there's someone that would be open to that. Is anybody open to has the ability to get a mortgage that wants to possibly look at this deal? Okay. See, Wilbert, that's great. You guys have done a lot of the groundwork there. No, why would they have a problem with that? Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. The mortgage itself can be held by anybody. The ownership of the property can be in a corporation where you're shareholders with other individuals. Does that make sense? So yeah, absolutely. You can work that out. That's really a logistical question on how you structure the deal. But absolutely, that won't be a problem. The deed can be held in one name and the mortgage in another. We all know this, yes? You can have a loan in someone else's name and the ownership of the property in someone else's name. The mortgage is a loan. The security is the property. So it's fine to do that. The security of the property is what the bank will use to protect their money. Yeah, you gotta factor that in, Sierra. Yeah, for sure. You gotta factor in the interest. Yeah. Well, I think that depends on the motivation of the seller. Usually it's at or just above the interest rate. If they're in a VTB situation, they're open to it. It really is a question of numbers. I would, talk to the seller and ask them what they're looking for. If you want, well, you can always propose the bank rate. You can always say, look, the bank rate's at 3. It's less than that now. Anyways, not the bank rate, the actual mortgage rate they're going to offer. Bank rate's a little bit higher, but you could offer 4, say 4%. You can just start at 4 and say, or even 3. You can even start at 3. It's not a problem. It's okay to ask, right, and see where they land, because they're not giving you the VTB to make money, even though they will. In most cases, they're giving you the VTB so they can execute the sale. Does that make sense? So the motivation typically is not profit. It's the execution of the sale. So you don't need to offer him 10%. He really wants to do this. He really wants to sell. And we'll find out when we offer it to him what he's open to. Does that make sense? I had a client contact me through my rental website wondering if I can help a couple get a house they are upside down in. Have you dealt in this situation? So the client so what the person that owns the house wants to do a rent to own, Timothy? What do you mean? What do you mean exactly by that, Timothy? Who wants to do the rent to own? Okay, wait 1 second here. Okay, Fort St. John, BC, client contact. Okay. So they are wondering if I can find a rent-to-own tenant for them to help them sell their house. I don't understand what you mean, Timothy. They're upside down on their house, and they want someone to rent to own to allow them to move. They owe more than they can sell it for. Okay. And they want to see if somebody rents to own so they can get. Oh, okay. So in this case, Timothy, I would approach this as a sandwich lease option, where they hold ownership of the property, and you put a tenant buyer in, and you're in the middle. So you have a rent to own, you have an option to purchase with them, and then someone has a rent to own with you, and you don't take ownership of that property until till the buyer's ready to buy. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think that a sandwich lease option would be the approach if they're willing to hold possession of the property, which in this case I assume they would because they're upside down on it. So if you can do that, that's great, Timothy, because you don't have to take possession of the property or get a down payment or a mortgage. They hold ownership. You're creating an option to purchase the property over the next 3 years or 5 years to purchase it. That'll get them break even. You'll have to run the numbers on that. But that's the approach I would take, Timothy. There might be a good opportunity here, actually, because in a sandwich lease option, you don't have to purchase the house until it's ready to be bought. Okay, so yeah, good. Okay, so let me go back to where are you? I meant the website do you use to find properties? So, Sue-Ann, do you mean, okay, so retail properties are going to be available on the MLS. You can look there, but there's probably not going to be a lot of opportunity. Right? So you're gonna use buyer seller networks like RECC. You're gonna use yeah, MLS is, I mean, that's good for you to do that. There's, from time to time, you're gonna find those opportunities, but really, if a couple individuals that I've already mentioned, Dave, this rent to own that he's doing, he put an ad on Kijiji, hasn't even met the guy, got a $500 deposit to run the deal. He sent him to his mortgage broker, still hasn't met the guy. Eventually he's going to meet the guy if the numbers make sense. And he just put an ad out. Timothy just mentioned that he put an ad out, and that's what got there. And someone, again, like if you're in the rent to own, I would say, I know some of you are looking at that, but Sierra's been working, and Wilbur have been working on that pretty hard for the last half year or so. They've done the same thing. They put out marketing and really attracted individuals to them. So you can put out the ads to attract other opportunities too. That tenant buyer, yeah. And it is a numbers game, and once you get it, it's going to happen. It's going to create more opportunities, no doubt. So Ann, I would consider, and I would like everyone to do this, and I hope you are at least going through the on-demands of the particular areas you want to invest in and using the marketing that they suggest in there. Yeah, and the next thing is to find investors. Yep, it's all part of the process. And once once you run it through successfully once, twice, 3 times, it's pretty much academic, and you got a system running. You're good. Okay, I'm going to wrap up. Any last questions? We're good? Timothy, you got one more? Good? All right, good. Good. So if everybody's good, type in Y or yes. Excellent. We had a good session today. We learned some good stuff. I love going over the stuff and the numbers so we understand it. And I'm glad you guys could make it. Apologies for the last post. It was not up. I was having some challenges, technical difficulties. This one and the last one should be up, though, in the next couple of days. And obviously, if you need me, you can reach me. You know how to reach me.